Attention wrestling fans. Attention wrestling fans. Welcome back to Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel here on Chaos Corner. Coming to you live to tape. One man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog for you, the fans. Story time on Chaos Corner. 1974. College radio. Northeastern State University in Oklahoma. To understand my 50 years in wrestling, you might need to first understand the years that came before it. As we review and read together for the very first time, business is about to pick up. 50 years and 50 of the greatest calls by the legendary good old JR, Jim Ross. Right up front, I'm going to say something that would have earned me an ass kicking when I broke into the business. Professional wrestling is entertainment. Let that marinate, let that sink in, kick back and put that in your pipe and smoke it. And like all entertainment, it has always only been as potent as the vessel that carried it. Whether it was first press record, or the birth of cinema, or the first TV satellite launched into space, the entertainment industry has always strived to develop better, more efficient ways of bringing its products to the masses, and the wrestling business is no different. In the beginning, wrestling was 100% a live ticket business that thrived or died on its ability to promote itself locally. Whether it was the carnival barker outside the tent or flyers around the town, converting attention into tickets was what led to either a good night at the box office or a bust. So in the 1940s, wrestling became a proven moneymaker and began popping up all over the United States. Let me repeat that. As wrestling became a proven moneymaker and began popping up all over and across the United States in the 1940s. A business pact has reached and was reached to carve up North America and other parts of the world into regional territories that would act as independent fiefdoms. This arrangement meant each promoter would respect the boundaries of their colleagues' territory and not trade on their turf, while also adhering to the other rules and business practices set forth by a new collective governing body known as the National Wrestling Alliance. Sit back, learn history, facts. That's why you're here, so you can carry on a fucking conversation in this industry. The NWA consolidated all the titles across the regions into one, crowning one recognizing and touring world champion. The working theory was having the world champion come to your town and wrestle your local hero, boosted your ticket sales considerably, and built up your hero to become a box office draw in his own right. The privilege, of course, would cost you a percentage to the NWA, which usually made financial sense until it didn't. You see, the NWA wasn't an independent body, but a select pool of the most powerful promoters it was supposed to oversee. And those promoters wanted what people who sat around political tables always want. What's best for themselves, kind of like what's going on in 2024. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to distract you from that. So even with full control of where the world champion wrestled and the outcome of the match, the spoils weren't always shared equally across the territories. As time went on, the lesser territories knew they couldn't rely on the champion stopping by to keep them alive. It was every territory for itself. They needed to understand their local audience, give them what they wanted, and then find a way to do the same in the next town the next week. What worked in one place might get booed out of the building in another. Southern parts of the country enjoyed a more realistic, rough and ready flavor of wrestling, while WWF's Northeast region preferred the larger-than-life spectacle. But as far-flung as one promoter might have been from another, they all shared the same common problem: how to put an ass in every 18 inches. I think today it's 16 inches due to inflation. After all, the greatest wrestlers in the world having the greatest matches didn't mean shit if nobody knew about it. So no matter the time period or the territory, gaining exposure was still the key to making money. It was no surprise that when along came TV in the 1950s, the greatest vessel for entertainment the world had ever seen, wrestling hit its first boom, hence the first golden era of the 50s. Heading into the 1950s, when regional promoters could only hit hundreds of eyeballs, television reached 12 to 15 million people across the country. The American Broadcasting Company, the Columbia Broadcasting System, the National Broadcasting Company, and the Dumont Television Network were looking for cheap event programming to occupy those same eyeballs. And paying a wrestling promoter who already had their own ring and wrestlers was a whole lot cheaper than paying a Hollywood producer who had to hire writers, actors, a director, a crew, pay for sets, props, and on and on. So in the age of Superman and Lucille Ball, in strutted a lightning rod from the wrestling world called Gorgeous George. Gorgeous George. By God, Gorgeous George made people from San Francisco to New York feel something. To New York City. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And when the people feel something, they become invested. Hence, ring psychology, emotional investment, and storytelling. I say it all the time. They stay tuned in. They spend their money. Now, it just so happens that most of the feelings they had toward George went those of rage and anger, but that's the beauty of wrestling. The anger was induced by design. In a time of tough guys and wise guys, Gorgeous George glided into America's homes with dyed platinum blonde hair and sequin robes as manservants misted the audience with perfume valets threw rose petals at his feet. I think I said that right. George Wagner was a good amateur wrestler who understood what was needed to become a great professional wrestler. And as Gorgeous George, the human orchid, if you will, he became a household name across the country. He became the toast of Hollywood, as all the top stars wanted to be seen at his matches. He wrestled for the NWA and other less powerful organizations like the American Wrestling Association. Originally a Depression-era small-town carnival wrestler, his star finally shone so bright that he was able to command half the box office returns while wrestling in all the major cities. Working with whatever promoters could afford him, making George not only the highest paid wrestler of the time, but the highest paid athlete, period. Many other famous names were influenced by him, including Muhammad Ali, Bob Dylan, it's a little weird, I know, James Brown, and just about every pompous blonde wrestler who's come along since. All boats rose together and wrestling became hotter, even in the smaller territories where George didn't wrestle. But like any boom, the golden era went bust. As at the end of the 1950s, overexposure took hold and numbers fell. As wrestling's national TV time dwindled, the business mostly retreated back to its regional roots, where the promoters waited for a pathway to national exposure once again. And we know that came again basically in the 80s as the second golden era, in my opinion. And that's where the chubby farm boy drops into wrestling's timeline in Oklahoma in 1974. A long time after any boom and a long time after any golden era, to quote good old JR. Now, how does a fan like me with no connections to the notoriously closed-off business get inside? I tell the promoter in my region that I can bring his company free exposure. That's how. I might have been NBC calling... hold on. Wait a minute. I mightn't have been NBC calling. And I sure as hell wasn't promising national exposure. But I was a college kid who could reach people in their homes in our area and tell them about the matches that were coming to their town. Now in 1974, it wasn't just a different time. It might as well have been on a different planet. That's for sure. Richard Nixon was forced to resign as President of the United States. Muhammad Ali and George Foreman beat the living shit out of each other in Zaire. It was the year that Matt Hardy and Rey Mysterio were born, and legends like Ricky Steamboat and Jesse Ventura debuted. In the Northeast Territory, Bruno Sammartino was on top in what was then called the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, now the WWE, who were separate from but friendly to the NWA, while Jack Briscoe ruled the National Wrestling Alliance proper as their world's champion. And some were right at the very bottom of that giant golden ladder of greats and greatness, I sat in Tulsa in my flared pants and standard issue haircut and explained to NWA Tri-State's co-owner, the huge no-nonsense cowboy Bill Watts, just how I could be help to his territory. I was 22 years old, married, working 3 jobs, and close to graduating college. Let that marinate as far as JR's life. And it was in that same college that I had access to a pipeline that had somehow never been used in an Oklahoma wrestling promotion before. And that would be radio. And you guys also know my history in radio, scholarships to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, my training, so on and so forth. Not only 25 years behind the walls, a bounty hunter, a repo man, a private investigator, a bodyguard, working for all top bands and performers in the entertainment industry, being a pro wrestling manager for over 30 years. I took the fucking bumps. You guys know that also that's why my play-by-play and commentary expertise through the Connecticut School of Broadcasting in my debut on radio, a WLNV 90.1 FM, just to give you a little background of what we're talking about here. I'm no JR. I'm just giving you my personal insights and story and relatable facts to what we cover here on this channel, and that's why you're here. And I humbly say no better than anyone else, just different. If we co-promoted some shows as charitable events, I told Cowboy, I could get radio spots for free by making them public service announcements. That word free, you know, NRA, that's not National Rifle Association. That's never refuse anything. If it's free, it's for me. And that's how most people are, you crumbs out there. No offense, man. Kayfabe what I say, man. Was all that budget conscious Watts needed to hear. Free. That's what everybody wants to hear when they think they're getting something for free. It's not how it works in reality. You don't get something for nothing. You do have to pay your dues somehow, some way, though, so it's not a bad way in this industry. It was a no-risk situation for him, and if I managed to pull it off, he'd have a powerful tool in his arsenal for no money down. I was immediately given the green light, so I sat in my college radio booth at Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, if I said that right, knowing that as long as I stayed useful, wrestling might keep me around. It sure worked, JR, 50 years later. And that the second I wasn't, I was back to the farm. That's true as well in this business. Out of sight, out of mind. Got to keep promoting, got to keep pushing. The hustle and grind is fucking real. And I apologize for the cussing, I really do. The feeling is something that has never left me. And I could say that for myself. My whole 50 years in wrestling, and that's JR talking, and my 40-year journey in pro wrestling as well. That's why I can relate to this book, and that's why I'm reading it here on Storytime. If I wanted to stay in, I had to constantly figure out ways to reinvent, to recalibrate, and most importantly, to evolve with wrestling's ever-changing nature. That's true, fans. As a worker, always bring your gear, always bring your bag. Set up the ring, break down the ring, help out with concessions, learn how to do promos, learn the camera work, hang up flyers, sweep floors. That's how do everything and learn everything in this business. Wear several hats like I did, and that's the only reason why I had a small modicum of success. It's because I contributed in several different categories. I checked the box in several different areas. I was an all-around 5-tool player. That's why I was able to last 30 years, 30 plus years now if you count commentary and broadcasting. And that's why I traveled this whole country on somebody else's dime as an independent pro wrestling manager, which is basically unheard of in this industry, especially back in my era. That's just the truth, and I wanted to relate that humbly to the fans out here. The bright, dusty day in my college booth, I pulled the microphone to my lips, and the first said the words I knew would either sink me or give me passage. And how fitting they were. Attention, wrestling fans. I'll say that to say this, because I tell it like it is. Don't you dare miss it.